Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to the previous panelists, actually. They've picked up on some really interesting points that I'll be discussing as well. First, a little bit about me. My name's John. I'm the MD of a French headquartered company based here in the region. And just to get you all settled, hopefully this will work, I'm going to show you a little cartoon. So we'll start with a bit of Nickelodeon to get you interested. There you go, so a bit of early morning cartoons to wake you up. I'm going to be a little bit different, actually. I'd like to understand from the audience, by show of hands, how many of you have ever taken a ride or a journey on an electric bus? More than I was expecting. With the same show of hands, I assume in Europe. That's great. When I'm here next year, I hope by the same show of hands, everybody has their hands in the air, having taken a journey on an electric bus. And when I ask the second question, I hope that at least some of you will have taken a journey on an electric bus within the region. So be here next year for the results of that survey as well. So a little bit about Comeca. We're a French headquartered company. We've got a presence in 11 countries around the world, and we have factories in 7 of those. My task is to head up the region for the company. We're based in a factory here in Abu Dhabi, and we also have a presence across the border in Qatar. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about some lessons learned from an EV bus perspective project that we executed in Strasbourg in France recently. So yeah. Has that changed? It has. So this project was executed using our own in-house Amber 2 range of chargers, including our own switchgear and our own supervision software. But I don't really want to turn this into a hard sell. I want this to be really some lessons that we've learned, because I think what's really missing in the region is this dedication to electric public transport. And really pleased that the panel discussion ended the way it did on the point that I wanted to make. So for this project, we manufactured in France, naturally, because the project was executed in France, but we're able to offer these products from all 7 of our factories around the world. So we want to be local, we want to be green as possible, and we want to build in the countries where we execute. So continuing the theme that not only this panel have made through the course of this conference, but actually sessions I heard yesterday, there was a strong desire for better regulatory and legislative support to convert from ICE to EV. And what's driving the projects that we've executed over the last 10, 15 years in Europe and in France is very strong regulatory and legislative support. So creating low emission zones within cities has created a huge uptake and adoption of electric buses within the urban environment, bringing with it the reduction in localized CO2 production, bringing with it a reduction in noise. It does bring challenges, of course, the infrastructure, the electricity infrastructure, the physical infrastructure that you need to have in place to support a new electric fleet. We don't face the same challenges in France as we would in the UK. For example, a project we were talking about in the UK recently, we were trying to convert a 150-year-old station that had been previously used with horse and carts, converted to ICE, and now they wanted to convert to EV, and it's simply not possible. But here in the region, we don't have those challenges. You know, we're a set of young, developing, dynamic countries. There's no reason that we can't make that change. And I think the way that the model works in France is that the town itself, the municipality, takes care of the capex, and a 6-year contract is let to the operating company who take care of the opex. So that combination of governmental and private companies moving forward together in partnership is a really strong model that I would really like to see adopted here in the region. So some of the challenges that we face when we're looking at projects like this. One, we have to choose the right bus. You know, we have to look at where is it going to go, how often is it going to operate, how many passengers does it need to carry, what are the possibilities of different charging regimes that bus can undertake. You know, is it going to be charged en route? Is it only going to be charged in a depot? What are the electrical infrastructure availabilities along that route for you to be able to recharge that vehicle? How much money have you got to spend? You know, do you want to adopt AC or DC charging, and the knock-on effects of that selection has on your bus? And also, when you're buying an electric bus, you have to make sure that if you have an existing charger infrastructure, that the bus and the charger are going to speak to each other, and you're going to be able to extract all of the information you need from the bus. And of course, perhaps more importantly, is put the charge back into the bus. Yep. The second challenge, I guess, is looking for the right charger. The first thing to remember is the charger is going to be used for a lot longer than the bus is. So in 6 years' time, to continue the story of Strasbourg in France, there's probably going to be a different operator selected. In that time, there's going to be new bus technology with higher capacities, so you need to ensure that you choose a charger technology that's suitable for now and for the future. Nobody wants to buy a 600 kilowatt charger now if you only need 50 kilowatts. You want to have a charger that can be expanded and that can grow with your needs and also change to new bus technologies and types. So then you have the interface of these challenges. At Comeca, we've been involved in charging electric vehicles since the 1970s, and our history dates back over 100 years. We currently have electric vehicle chargers that were installed in the late 90s in Ireland. What's important is that we need to be able to prove communications between the charger and the bus across both main standards, DIN and ISO. Make sure that you can retrieve the data you need for any smart charging. So you must be able to communicate any critical data that's required for smart charging, and I'll show you a benefit of smart charging in the last slide. And critically, of course, no electric bus is usable without a reliable charger infrastructure. So the charger you select has to be reliable. It has to be easily maintainable. It has to be something that you need, that you know when it's going to go wrong, and when it does go wrong, because it will, you need to be able to repair it quickly and effectively. So on this particular challenge, on this particular project, I beg your pardon, one of the challenges we faced was a compressed timescale. Within 9 months, we needed to convert an existing ICE bus line into an electric bus line while maintaining the transport capacity of the ICE buses. A bit of a challenge. The infrastructure must also be suitable, make sure I'm on the right slide, sorry, must be suitable for the future expansion and to move to the next generation of buses that are due to arrive at the latest in the next 6 years. And we also needed to deliver 100% reliability and reduce power consumption as much as possible. So how did we do that? Well, the civils were carried out, so the civil works, the installation of and design of the infrastructure was carried out in parallel to the manufacturing of the switchgear, the chargers, and the design of the smart charging software. So that relies on a very close interface between the civil installer, civil designer, and the company who's doing your electrical infrastructure. And ultimately what we ended up installing on this specific project is 68 50 kilowatt Amber 2 chargers, each of which is expandable up to 100 kilowatts each within the current framework. To help promote the maintenance and the smart charging, we installed comprehensive remote monitoring that's available not only at the bus line operator's depot, but also at both of our factories and also at the localized service center that we set up. So that allows us to do preventative, predictive maintenance to maintain that uptime of the charging infrastructure. So this client in particular has installed 45 chargers in 2021. This is in addition to the project I'm discussing here. And across the different sites they operate, they have 4 different bus brands. So they've managed to select a common charger brand for 4 different bus types to maintain the same amount of communication and smart charging infrastructure that they have with any other bus. And thanks to the digital profile that we've developed for them, we're providing that predictive, preventive, and routine maintenance for the installed charger base. So some of the benefits, because they have selected a modular solution, each individual power module can be replaced in less than an hour. So no downtime for their charging fleet, and through the smart charging applications that we've developed for them, we've delivered significant savings in peak power consumption and delivering maximum availability. So this has saved significant savings in the electrical infrastructure. So on this particular project, we installed a 1 MVA transformer for the electrical people amongst you. Normally, you'd only be able to provide 20 buses from this transformer. In this case, because of their smart charging, we can actually provide power to 34 buses. So instead of putting in a 2 MVA transformer, you've saved significantly on initial infrastructure costs. One thing that I think is particularly relevant to this region is nobody wants to get on a bus first thing in the morning that has been sat overnight in summer. It's 37 degrees inside the bus with somehow 130% humidity. Because we're able to offer preconditioning of the buses, we can do pre-cooling, or if you're from Europe, preheating. From Aberdeen, for example, preheating is perhaps more important than pre-cooling. And this same system allows complete visibility of the whole charger and bus network to the bus operator. And finally, I'm rattling through this a lot quicker than I thought. This is an example of what we managed to save on this project. The graph on the left-hand side is the charging regime without charging. Without smart charging, I beg your pardon. And as you can see, normally this would have required a peak load of 450 kilowatts to recharge this bus fleet throughout the day. But because of the smart charging regime, we've managed to reduce that peak about 56% down to 185 kilowatts. Again, sorry for the electrical talk, but that's a significant saving in peak power. And you'll note that there is no peak during the middle of the day at peak electricity tariff times. So this can be used perhaps in conjunction with battery energy storage systems. You can charge them up through the day using solar, for example, in the region, and you can discharge them overnight to recharge your bus fleet while they're parked up. So there are important factors here. The key things that I've taken away from the 3-day conference is we've heard from a lot of car manufacturers. You can see them all parked out there. But nobody in the region seems to be talking about mass transit or the use of EVs for industrial vehicles. There are isolated pockets of interest, but I feel that this is a quick win for the region. And to continue the theme, the sooner that we can get to stronger regulatory and legislative support from the governments and build the public and private partnerships, the sooner this will take off. There is a huge supply chain out there who are willing to support this drive to green energy. All we need now is the support and the initiatives, but I think the supply chain is ready. Thank you very much for your time. I've been John. Please follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. And are there any questions from the audience? Yes. Shout at me. Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation.
Pleasure.
I wonder how you manage especially the preconditioning of a fleet under extreme weather conditions. I mean, taking the case, for example, Abu Dhabi, you have a fleet of 50 vehicles, and both of them have to be ready on a very shiny summer day in the morning, cooled down.
Yeah.
But over the night, you have the fleet to be charged. So first you charge one bus to full state, then you bring the other one, and when you charge the first bus, early hours during the night, how to keep it preconditioned until the daily operation starts?
Great question, and so the question is, how do we ensure that the buses are ready to be occupied first thing in the morning after baking overnight? That's a very good question, and one I'm not 100% sure of the answer of, but I believe that the preconditioning is done. The routes and the departure times of each individual vehicle are known to the smart charging system. So in addition to the smart charging system knowing which route that bus is going to take, it knows when it needs to be recharged, it knows when it's going to depart the depot, for example. So my belief is that preconditioning takes place within a set period before the departure of that specific vehicle. But I'll double check that and publish it back to you. Thank you.
If you don't mind, I would like to ask a second question.
Yeah, no, okay. Go ahead.
Having your experience in Europe and reflecting your lessons learned to the region, to Abu Dhabi or Dubai or any other major city here around, which type of charging mode will be dominant, do you think? I mean, depot charging, opportunity, a mix of it?
Sorry, what's the question about?
Which type of charging mode will be dominant here in the region?
Very good question. I think it's going to be depot charging, and then a certain element of opportunity charging around the route. But primarily, I think we're going to see depot charging here. The routes are relatively short around the cities, so I think we'll see more depot charging than en route opportunity charging. Was that the question? Sorry, the microphone's not very loud. Ah, yes, please.
Hi, Jonathan Spear from Atkins. Excuse me, Peanut. Could you just say a bit more about the opportunity charging place in the overall kind of system? Because, I mean, you'll be aware that in Dubai, for example, they've been trialling the Volvo bus with ABB charging, which is basically an opportunity charging model. And one of the reasons for that is actually the routes aren't short because the depots are so far out of town that you actually depleted quite a lot of your charge before you actually get onto the route. So it's actually about the distribution locations of the depots will determine whether it's more depot charging or opportunity charging. But could you say just a little bit more about what you're doing on the opportunity charging kind of space?
Yeah, sure thing. So on this specific project, we're primarily carrying out depot charging. But you raised, a really great point. How far away is the depot from where the route starts? What the infrastructure is on the route? I wasn't aware of the trial with Volvo and ABB, so thanks for letting us know about that. Like I say, on this specific project, there is limited opportunity charging around the route, and it's primarily carried out within the confines of the Strasbourg city limits, so very limited route length, so very limited need for en route charging.
We don't see many projects on the public transport in this region. What do you think is the reason?
Wow, if that's a very good question. If I knew the answer to that with 100% surety, I think we'd be happy. I think prior to COVID, we definitely started to see projects looking at electric public transport, electric buses, the use of electric vehicles, for example, at Dubai Airport was under discussion, somewhat starting again. What's really driving the growth in Europe, and in particular in France, but also the UK, is the creation of low emission zones, significant subsidies and penalties for cities not to adopt low emission zones. There are good financial incentives for cities to move over to public buses. And in fact, if you log on to our Twitter or website or LinkedIn, we published a piece actually on the regulatory support in France and how it's driving the change within France to electric vehicles. So it's a combination of carrot and stick, and I think that change in legislative and regulatory environment would really benefit the Middle East. The combination of public and private as well, I think, to be allowed, private companies allowed to sell electricity. It is a huge change to the region's mindset, but it's one that's needed for us to change to the new green forms of transport. My apologies. Sorry, please go ahead.
What about the industrial transportation? That segment, is it attractive here?
Industrial transportation, so trucks. So in Europe, we are starting to see a transition across to industrial electric vehicles. The first projects that we're exploring are actually garbage trucks, rubbish collection trucks. But we are also seeing conversion of airside vehicles, for example. I think it was Frankfurt and maybe ABB perhaps recently converted at least some of their airside vehicles to electricity, and I think that model works really nicely here as well. I know Donata are looking at it here. We're so far away at the moment of having widespread buses, for example. I think we're years away, unfortunately, from having industrial vehicles. But it will come. I don't think there's any other option.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I've overrun dramatically, so my apologies. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you to CEBC and Nirvana for inviting me, and thanks for your time.